I guess this is the beginning of the city council meeting. It's 5 p.m. Tuesday, July 7th, 2026, and we're going to go ahead and call it to order. Uh, the roll call is we don't have a quorum right now. We don't need one, but Councilman Hinton should be here for our council meeting. So we'll go ahead and do the invocation.
Let's pray. God and Father in heaven, we come before you this afternoon so very thankful for all the blessings and truths that you give us, that you bestow upon us, and also the opportunity to serve each other, serve the city of Mount Pleasant. We ask that you give us wisdom, strength, and courage to identify the right thing to do it and follow through. We ask that you give us appreciation for all the truths, the blessings that you give us, and also for the opportunities. We ask you to make the most of this time this evening as we serve our citizens here in Mount Pleasant, that we do everything to your glory. We ask this all in your holy son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to go ahead and move on to just the item number 1, which is the workshop. It's a presentation and discussion of the compensation study, the budget, and the strategic planning.
Mayor, Council, this evening we have the presentation of our long-awaited compensation study. We have Shane, our consultant, and I'm going to give him as much time as he needs, and then whatever time he does not use, we'll go over strategic planning. The good thing is we're not going anywhere, so if we need to schedule another evening, we could certainly do that. But Shane, I'll give you as much time as you need, and we certainly appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Let's see where. So first, I want to call attention to a handout that you have up at the dais. And what this is every position, that's right, every position in the city of Mount Pleasant by department with the current midpoint for each of those positions in the current step plan, their rank against the full cohort of the market, as well as their rank versus the 7 rural cities within the market as well, which I'll go over those, but they are Bonham, Corsicana, Jacksonville, Nacogdoches, Palestine, Paris, and Sulphur Springs. And then the DFW adjacent communities are Ennis, Greenville, Rockwall, and Waxahachie. Okay? And what you'll see there is your midpoint, the rank, and then each individual city where we were able to get a good match for the position. And then at the very end, there are 2 columns. One is the 50th percentile point for the full cohort. The last column is versus the rural communities at the 50th percentile. So you can look at your midpoint versus the 50th percentile, which is essentially the midpoint of the pyramid. And I'm going to give you these details because we're not going to go through each position in the presentation. But you've got these details that's been presented to you before in some other formats, but we tried to boil it down as simple and straightforward as we possibly can. And so you have that. Obviously, this will be in my final written report. So what I'm trying to accomplish tonight, and I'll be as efficient as I possibly can. What the request is tonight is acceptance that the analysis is complete and defensible, and we've been through a lot of meetings, some of you yourselves one-on-one as well as several group meetings. An endorsement of the study is the foundation for subsequent policy and budget decisions, and a record that you've reviewed this. It is not a request for you to adopt anything. That is going to be a discussion between Rob and Candace, Holly, your department directors, and yourself. It's not a request for approval of any raises for anyone. It's not a selection of a director model or anything along those lines, or commitment to any specific dollar. So what we did 3 main things. We looked at your internal structure, We looked at what the market said for each position, and then we looked to try to target a response. And if you remember early on, I pointed out some structural challenges with your existing step, predominantly with compression and issues with promotion premiums not being sufficient, and compression being where there's just not enough range and you had a lot of people that were already up close to the top of the range. And I proposed an entirely new structure for you, but I'm going to tell you right now what this is tonight. After all the meetings that we had, I set that to the side and just simply looked at what if we move positions to a different grade that is more fitting to both the market or the compression issues vertically that we have. Political and budget realities are what they are, and my job is to give you a product that fits your reality. And it became very, very clear to me that your political and your budget reality, based on the feedback that I got, was going to be very, very difficult for the city to absorb anything else. And so we've just gone and grossly simplified. The recommendation and the alternative will be in my final report, so that if staff wants to hang on to that and then present it to you at a future date and we update some things, terrific. But what we do propose tonight, or what I'm going to throw out there, should fix some of the short-term issues, but it's going to leave you with some of your long-term issues, okay? The full city cohort, we went through them here, Bonham, Corsicana, Ennis, Greenville, Jacksonville, Nacogdoches, Palestine, Paris, Rockwall, Sulphur Springs, Black Badge. Of the non-metro sub-cohort, and Corsicana kind of on the border, but Bonham, Corsicana, Jacksonville, Nacogdoches, Palestine, Paris, Sulphur Springs. You have each of those individual communities in your detail list there. And then what we tried to do was match your midpoint to the 50th percentile midpoint for each of these within the marketplace and see what that looks like. So what is in the benchmark are base salaries, okay? I have certification pay, I have incentive pay and things like that. By and large, y'all are more competitive on the health insurance side and on the TDRS side. By and large, your certification pay and education incentives are pretty much on par with most people. There's some that are higher, some that are lower, but really this focus on, it wasn't enough to make a difference for the challenge that you face. So the overall population, and this is full-time employees, okay, this is not your part-time. A base payroll of about 11.1 million over 172 employees, and you see the breakdown here. 11 directors, 87 civilian, plus your telecommunicators, 32 sworn police, 33 fire. This changes up and down depending on the week. For example, I've just recently found out, about some other major personnel changes. The market position of your civilian. So we've got three buckets here. Below the peer 50th by more than 2.5%, above the peer 50th percentile by more than 2.5%, and within 2.5% plus or minus. Of your 17, you had 17 positions on the civilian side that were below the peer 50th by more than 2.5%. You had 15 that were above the peer 50th by more than 2.5%. You had 12 that were right kind of within the sweet spot, if that's what you're doing. It's not uniform anywhere, okay? Your overall kind of comes out a little bit lower because of where some of this falls in the volume of the fleet. So here's a list of some of those that, or all of those that are currently below the peer 50th. This does not include police and fire, okay? So senior telecommunicators, defense services people. Some of this is some match issues as well, but kind of get the idea, okay? Some of it's not excessive. Yes. Oh, 100%. This is yours. I'll be sending out this. Yeah. And I'm not going to label, because this is getting down into the weeds. It's not even, and you can have those flags.
Yes,
Candace
we'll
has
also
them.
share it with all the council members.
That's right. Staff already
Yes,
has them.
yes, we will share this. You'll be able to blow it up large.
I just
Yes,
wanted
sir.
to point out those positions, okay? And more than likely, there's a quality control issue that I found on one of the public works positions in the foreman category that I need to take one more look at, that I wasn't comfortable with, and will probably move up into this. Within the 2.5%, a lot of your utility technicians 3, they're off, but not by much. Operator 1s are typically okay, and this is fairly consistent with feedback that we've received from the department director. And then we've got some that are above. The recommendation that I'm making, what it did was take the midpoint for their current grade in the current step plan, and look at where the 50th percentile was for the marketplace and what grade they should move to if that's going to be the case. What we also look for is for where there is clear progression, making sure that the subsequent grade that they could move into actually is very high. And we made some changes that have resulted in like 10. Let me look at that again, forgive me. I'm just going to verify something first. Yeah, 10 changed to different grades on the civilian side. We also created 2 separate grades for the telecommunicators. They just didn't fit well within the overall civilian. And then we did some very specific things with the police and the fire. So what we've got is 42 positions on the civilian side, 14 were below the 50th at more than 2.5%, 16 were slightly or were above, about 2.5% or more. Well, the average gap was a little bit above because some of these were significantly about 2.7%. Telecom, senior telecommunications was below. Your other telecommunications was high, but not by much, with the gap of about 2 points. The 4 officer positions, we were close, and not quite good. And this depends, again, how we look at the market matters substantially. Several different ways to cut the data compared to what we're doing with civilian telecom. Same thing on fire. Some were good, some were not. I'll go through that. I've already kind of shared some of it. So police officer and sergeant land close to tier 50 if we're using that cohort. But remember, your mark on the rural side, but your overall market for officers is quite larger than and then we also needed to make some changes because there wasn't enough of a promotion premium from sergeant, for example, to lose your incentive there, and you end up with a chance of losing people mid-career going into leadership and going to leadership. And we want to avoid that sort of thing. It's one thing to recruit new officers, it's another to retain them as they become experienced and qualified to move into leadership. Because usually with that, there's tenure, which also means that the community is stronger as well, which is absolutely vital to this. So your overall, these recommendations and we'll deal with police and fire in a second, we're only looking at about $60,000, okay? Just to make the grade changes on the civilian. Again, it gives you some short-term relief, but it does not fix the long-term structural problem of construction, okay? It doesn't answer your concerns about step one, because again, redesign, all of it became very, very obvious. No way y'all are positioned for a on the fire side. We had 18 incumbents. The current midpoint was about 57.6. Proposed going to 68. The here is right about 66. 66.5. We combined all three of the fire grades, AA and BB, are blended together. There was no CC with the driver engineer. The midpoint currently is about 65, going to 84. The 50th percentile is actually higher, but this is something that the department felt they could work. Okay, the goal is not to beat the market on all these positions. It's to be competitive. And you see the rest of it. Overall, the gap summary, the current versus peer, proposed is just much more competitive. Especially if you get people that they get more experience and that they're in the community. They've got some community ties, so as long as they're not driving them away, you've got a better. Go ahead. Oh, it looked like you had a question. So, on the police side, current midpoint was 65.2. The peer is 74.1. We're proposing to take them up the midpoint to about 73.5. Sergeant, 83.3 right now. The marketplace say at 93.5. We landed with around 91. The lieutenant side, 818 versus 100 on the peer. Looking at going up a little bit higher here, but some of this is because of promotion premium making it. So this is where we were compared to the market. This is where that your assistant chief position, that's going to be something that y'all can work based off of the fact that the city manager. One of the things that fire requested and made sense was a debt position that was for their promotion, for flat pay for their probation firefighter, and then move them into the FD1 classification, which is a combined classification of the old pay and CC. That FD2, which was the BD, police officer, 10-step, sergeant, lieutenant, and assistant chief. That works for what they're looking. They top out sooner, but they reach their max. So what this does for us on the police side, officer to sergeant, previously was about 10% premium. This takes it to just around 24%. This is for someone in the middle of the grade. Sergeant to lieutenant was only 2.3% currently. This takes it to about 20%. That's real. And then, of course, going to assistant chief, it would be 20%. Again, it's something for y'all to figure out where you want it. Because I didn't have to do it. Firefighter to driver right now is less than 1% premium. This takes it to about 4%. Going from a driver to a captain was less than 3% premium. Now it makes it close to 10%. Going from captain to deputy chief was less than 3%. It's about 13.5%. So cost is greater on the fire and the police side, to make the recommended change. You're looking at, on the police side, about 140,000, about 180,000 on the fire. This, even as expensive as that is, represents 6% increase on the police, salary, and about 8% on the fire. The combined sworn officers increase about 7%, just over 300. Your director, this is a little bit busy. You've got this column here. This is the director position. This is their current salary. Here's where tier min, mid, and max. And then how it compares to the mid, or max, whichever is most up. City manager is not in this because that's a negotiated. So your assistant city manager and city secretary is just under 131,000. The minimum for that is 141,000. 11,000, almost $11,000 below the minimum. Here. Any of these that are above the minimum, so you've got your chief of police, he's right just a little bit above the mid, going to the back. And that probably fits based on your fire chief, based on his tenure. He was just above the max. And from what I again, tenure starts to matter. Your director of finance, that position $10,000 minimum of the total. Human resources, 95, that's $10,000 minimum at the 50th percentile for the peer group. The director of utilities, about 2,200, close to 2,300 below the midpoint of the cohort. And given the scale of your utility, the min here is not the best measure, because your scale is a little bit larger than most. Director of Public Works currently is sitting at about $1,600 below. The duties, though, include parks and recreation and other things that a lot of other public works are. Director of Development Services, 125, is about $228 below. Your library director, the minimum here is a little bit deceiving. Not all libraries are created like public works, utilities. Library is one. Our library is not. So you've got about 3,500 below mid. In airport manager, it's another situation. Scale and a little bit above the max. However, you've got 137 aircraft based at this rural airport, and you've got an employee that's got, it's one of the top players in the marketplace, honestly, and has extended his career and served. That your airport is more equal than other airports. That's a simple situation. Why? So I looked at 3 different looks just to get a feel for cost and share that with you. If we said that all the directors at least need to be at the tier minimum, what would that cost? And it cost just under $36,000. If you move them midway between the peer minimum and the peer mid, it would cost just over $96,000. And if you move them to the midpoint, the total cost would be about $150,000. I've shared with some of your peers, Mayor, before. Y'all made some changes a few years ago, promoted people after some of the things that have happened in the past. we're a few years past that, and the key, I think, to think how to think about the directors, because it's a little bit harder than rank and file employees. The market minimum is the market minimum for doing the job. When we worry about certification and the paper qualifications matching up with the person serving the position, it's not that those things aren't important, but if the person is doing the job and performing the job, you've got to be very careful about not paying them competitively, because those positions in particular, everybody knows each other and everybody is looking for their next best one. And you can end up with somebody disappearing on you very, very quickly. The things that tie them are their loyalty to their community and their loyalty to their staff and their loyalty to each other. Your directors have built a very good culture here of working together and collaborating together. I do this with cities across the state of Texas, and there's some good staff out there, very good staff. I've never seen the level of intercommunication between directors that I've seen at this place. And that is impressive. To see a library director and a utilities director, a police chief actually aware of what's going on in development services, that is highly unusual. You've got a really good leadership team. And I would encourage y'all at the very least to make sure these directors are paid at the minimum at the period, if you can. If your budget can allow it, I think that it's worthwhile. The other things, if somebody is not performing to the task, that's a management problem, not a pace. And then you've got to make a hard choice to potentially replace them. But if they're performing, the minimum is the minimum is the minimum. And then you can make decisions about experience, certifications, and things like that. And your city manager can develop performance criteria that meets your approval that allows them to increase their. So I would just leave that with y'all and encourage you to really, really contemplate, because they're a good bunch as a team. They're hard to replace, and it's going to be impossible to replace at these dollars. Okay? So total investment, civilian telecom, we're looking at about a 1% change here, around $60,000. 140 on the police side, 188 on the fire. If you just went and made sure that directors are at the minimum of the tier, about $424,000, which is 3.81% of the total pay. Okay. And it would be another 61,000 to move them all to the list. Okay. Good. So, what this report is, we looked at your structural and market issues. Recommendation for very, very targeted, as conservative as possible. If you remember back in February, I believe, I suggested that any structural change would not be more than 600,000. Your worst case is looking at maybe 480,000, and 424 gets you a long ways down the road. It really addresses your police and fire for the long term, and it goes from a short-term perspective, really starting to address the civilian challenges. And the civilian challenges that remain is just fixing the compression issues that exist, and then just getting some better classifications. And that's not going to be anything super expensive. But this entire process, the goal has been to keep this as conservative as possible. And I don't think it's much more conservative than going to 50th percentile of rural markets. Your peers within the region. And you see what those rankings are when you look at that. The lower the number, the higher they are, the higher the number. So when you see 8 of 9, that means they are the 8th lowest of the bunch. Okay? But this is not talking about automatic COLA, automatic raises of COLAs, not a recommendation to increase every employee's pay, not a specific budget proposal, and no commitment to an implementation timeline. Although I would suggest, if your budget allows, this has got to be probably one of the key maintenance and operations things that has to be addressed. I mean, we know this from the feedback that I've received. Number one, that y'all already knew about, that got you to look at this. Number two, the feedback I got from y'all individually, from your directors, and from the community as a whole in my months working. And I guess just before I take questions, I would just say, number one, y'all have been great. Councilman Corbell and Redfern Faulkner, y'all have been deeply involved in the committee. The senior leadership team here of Rob and Candace and Holly, they have been extraordinary, and I'm sure they're sick and tired of me already. And then finally, the directors have been nothing but collaborative and helpful. They didn't come in with big asks. In fact, and certainly none of them had any input on anything I had to say or look into related to their tech. In fact, some of them didn't. So, just thanks to all of you. I've really enjoyed working with the city, and look forward to giving you a written report, and I'll answer any questions.
I'd like to say thank you. This is the best presentation that we've had. It seemed to have been simplified, easier for us, or easier for me to follow. I appreciate it. It gives me a better look at things where I can really concentrate on all the issues individually and take a look. So I appreciate it, and I'm really happy with it and can't wait to get my hands on it.
Thank you.
And ditto. I missed the little slide. So basically what you're suggesting is 400 and 424.
Yeah, if
Let me think.
you could do that, it'll go a long ways for you.
It's to me, if that is down.
Don't forget that some of that, doesn't all come just from the general fund, because sewer and water is going to have some specific provisions to it. But Rob will take you through all of that.
Mm-hmm. But no, this gives us the guideline of what to do now, plan for the future.
Great.
And it puts us to work.
Excellent.
Thank
you. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you all for your participation and feedback. Mayor?
I'm good, and I hate to ask the one question that our taxpayers are probably going to ask. With that and with the budget, it may be for you or Rob, were we talking about a property tax increase in order to meet that, or are we just talking about making sure the rest of our budget balances to meet that? Or I know that's what everybody that's watching and that's in it. That's
Certainly.
what they're asking.
I'll go ahead and answer that question. That is a important question. We talked about it during this study. We want to make sure the budget balances, that we are able to offer the same level of service that we currently offer and or better. A lot of, if you recall, when John was here with our audit, what he talked about is that if we do look at taxes, I'm summarizing, but if we do look at taxes increase, it's because we need to make sure our debt service is covered. First of all, that's our biggest issue, our debt service. And it is, if you look at our debt over the last 5 years, it is increased. We couldn't borrow anything else if we wanted to, because we have, I don't want to say we're overextended, but we're definitely at our max. So our first and foremost priority is to make sure that we pay our debt. So if there were to be any increased taxes, and we don't know what that looks like yet, we don't have all our numbers in, it would be because we have to pay service. because those payments they're not an option. They don't go.
And our new sales taxes that we should be getting, would they be able to go towards that debt services? I know all of this stuff is
Yes.
separated out.
Our
for certain things.
next budget workshop, we'll have all of our numbers. The tax assessor will be here as well. The reason she's not here tonight is she will not have the accurate numbers until after next week. So what we don't want to do is bring information that's not accurate, and then that gives us a springboard from which we jump forward and really determine and look at everything. There will be a needs, and then there will be a want. We need people. We need this. We need that. We want X, Y, and Z. Well, the wants are going to have to go first if the budget doesn't open. So to answer your question, and I don't mean to sit on the fence, we don't know what that tax rate might look like yet because we don't have all the numbers. I think it would be premature of me to say absolutely yes.
Would you like me to just highlight kind of where the
Please,
city
yes.
sits? So one of the things, and I presented this earlier this year, where you sit in the 32 communities within 100 miles of here, 9,000 people or more, you have the single lowest maintenance and operations tax rate of all, by an order of close to 10 cents. Your debt rate is the second to lowest in the entire region, and that's compared to a city that has a bunch of industrial value that's able to artificially drive down their debt rate and get a lot more debt service just because they have a lot more value. So I think it really does come down, as Rob said, to priorities and clearly communicating with the public and helping them to understand these things cost money and services cost money, and just like the inflation we all experience in our personal lives, so does this building, and all the staff and everything that goes into it, much less supply chain costs, et cetera, et cetera. So as your value grows, that puts downward pressure on your tax rate, which is good. But at the same time, you can get a little bit low compared to the needs and wants of your community. So hopefully the strategic plan that Rob's working on is going to help identify some of that. And then y'all have the hard task of just helping people understand you want and need this. This is what it costs. Here are the mechanisms by which we can get there. And then the chips have to fall somewhere. And that's a hard conversation to have sometimes, especially in this political environment today.
Yeah, and the one thing that I know is up in the air, and I'm sure we can't do any projections on it, but I'm sure our sales tax next year is probably going to look completely different, at least mid-27 by the time, we've got a lot of businesses coming in, so it'd be nice if, I'm sure we can't project it, but it's not doom and gloom that I see for our sales taxes and even our taxes. I think all of that money's going to start coming in. So, I mean, I just saw the last presentation just seemed a little bit more doom and gloom about sales taxes and where we fell and all of that stuff. And it's going, I mean, all of our stuff is going up. So, I mean, that's all I'm saying is that it's more positive, I feel, and it's probably your job to pull out what you do pull out for us to be able to recognize, what we are going against. But it's to me, it's more positive than what we're looking at.
I would say this: your payroll is, getting police and fire addressed pretty strongly, and then certainly on the utilities and public works side as well as another important place, and then your directors. That positions you really well for the future. Everything else is just structural changes, and it's fairly marginal from a cost perspective. What's really challenging for y'all is on the revenue side, and some of that is a little bit, when I say self-imposed, when I say council, I mean the longevity of council, regardless of how long any individual members may have been here or whatever. But don't forget that as certain things increase, it drives your tax rate down, and the temptation to take the no new revenue rate is very, very high. And the thing is, costs keep increasing, and that's not a doom or gloom thing. It's just we've got to still plan ahead. And the only warning I would say about sales tax is very, very volatile. take windfalls when they come and invest them in key things, but your property tax base is your stable growth and base expansion mechanism that's out there. And you can do that through new growth, getting in good industry. Even if you're abating it, getting good pilot payments in exchange for it, awesome. And then that takes pressure off of your residential and small commercial and small retail. Or you grow the base overall, and if you're not having to abate it, it takes the pressure off of everybody, but don't bottom out your tax rate. And just keep in mind that these other rural communities that your tax rate is low compared to, it's the rural communities out of that bunch that y'all are absolutely even lower, which is concerning because a lot of those communities are in the same boat y'all are in, and as you talk to your peers, they're struggling with some of the same issues, and yet you're even lower than they are, and their taxable value is not that substantially different. So I would just encourage you on the economic development front to bring in good industry that increases your property tax base, and then educate your public to really understand how property tax works and how small incremental changes that get spread out across a larger group can have a massive impact on the things that they want. If they don't want certain things, then no problem.
Yeah, and I think I know Shirley's probably going to clear this up, but my only contention with raising property taxes is the appraisal district is already doing that, right? With whatever increase that they put in place.
Not necessarily, because you have the no new revenue rate mechanism in place. And what that does is it basically says whatever you took in M&O revenue last year, you get to get that same amount on the same properties that existed last year. So if they inflated a bunch, number one, residences are capped. They can't raise more than 10% in a given year. Number two, it drives what we call the no new revenue rate down. And so a lot of people end up with a tax decrease, or they pay the same bill, but they're just paying it on a lower amount. They're paying it on a higher amount, but at a lower rate, and they're paying about the same thing. It's really, really important that someone dig into what exactly those effects are. And that's when the tax assessor comes. I assume that they're going to be modeling your no new revenue rate based on preliminary values.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I've asked for is what, in the last 3 to 5 years, what have we collected in our property taxes?
Mm-hmm.
This. And that's a great thing, too, is how much do we actually get the use of it, right? So that would be interesting for me because I don't understand a lot
Absolutely.
of this stuff. So.
She will have that information dating back to 20.
And Mayor, that's not unusual. Honestly, a lot of county commissions and councils simply do not. And the state of Texas hasn't made it harder. The legislature the last several years has complicated the process even more in the name of helping us, but it's actually muddied the waters and made it more and more difficult for people to understand how our property tax system actually works.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that presentation from Shirley is probably going to give a lot of people peace on actually seeing the numbers, right? I mean, that's what we've been all about. It's just what is being spent.
That's right. And against what kind of value? Because what you'll find is your tax rate probably, I would guess, 10, 15 years ago is probably 10 to 15 cents higher than it is today.
Jane,
Yes, ma'am.
did I hear you right? I was taking a note that our bond debt is lower, one of the lowest ones of the community. That surprises me, and that's why I was wondering, because I did know that, I think it was Paris, that Paris did not have as much debt as we have. And of course, Paris is much larger than we are.
Yeah, and they've got a debt rate that's almost twice what y'all. They're like 15 something cents.
You're specifically talking about M&O debt rate, correct?
There is no, well, the INS debt rate.
Sorry,
M&O rate, their M&O rate is higher than y'all as well. They're second lowest.
And while he's looking for that, Candace is if she hasn't already, is emailing this presentation to each of you. You will have that for your very own look at it.
When we start working on this budget, that's always something that we come up and start talking about
Yeah.
is what our bond debt is.
And that's gonna be your your interest and M&O is what we're talking about here, that pays for your day-to-day and your small projects. Your public debt or your tax notes, the bonds that people have voted on, and the tax notes that you go and get privately, those are what we call public debt. That's what you're buying at. Everything else, your revenue bonds and your certificates of obligation and maintenance and operations, that's paid for out of your maintenance and operations. That's
And also, I think when we meet with Shirley, I know this is coming, that they passed the state where inventory on businesses is not turned in as tax anymore. So I know we'll be getting that lovely.
Yeah, they capped it at 120 business personal property, and this isn't a bad change, but it is going to have an effect, especially for a community like y'all's where you have a lot of small businesses. The state capped the valuation at which business personal property can be taxed at $125,000, and so for small businesses that have less than $125,000 in equipment, machinery, and things like that, they will pay no tax on that $125,000. What that does is shift the tax burden to everybody else. Anytime we narrow the tax base, it pushes the burden out. But I think you may have had pretty decent growth in value, which that will help. That will help. Just understand that the increase in value does not give you an automatic tax increase. The no new revenue rate is a circuit breaker that tells taxpayers, hey, are they trying to sneak in a tax increase on me? That number lets them know whether or not, and that whether to have a conversation. And it tells you whether or not it's like, hey, we need about 500,000, we need about $1 million more out of the thing that we're getting. This is a tax rate that we need to adopt to get it. Are you willing to go there? Et cetera, et cetera. And taxpayers now they get the opportunity to vote on any tax increase that's more than 3.5% above that number. So you have flexibility within that. You just have to have hearings, make sure you communicate effectively why you're doing something that actually needs, and let the chips fall where they will. I just think the conversations and that I see across the state, getting one side, either council or a county commission trying to sneak something in, which obviously angers people and rightly so, or they're not educating their public, or the public gets up in arms and elected members don't know how to effectively. And so all of that can be resolved through good communication, transparency, and real information and real data. And a lot of these conversations do not get had. We're seeing the same thing with data centers, by the way.
Shane, if just for clarification, and also the public does not have this companion reference, per city peer detail sheet, but just for and we will make this public, but just for clarification for the public and also for us to have this, looking at page 2, and I'm just gonna take one random out of the civilian streets foreman. It is for the rank versus full and rank versus rural. It is 3 out of 11. Can you, just for clarification, is 1 the best? Is 11 the best?
1 is the highest of the peer group. Okay. And if it's against 11 of 11 would be the lowest.
No. So for streets foreman, we are 3 of 11.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's take another one that's high, utilities technician, 3, which would be in the next section. It looks like it is a 4 out of 12. So what I'd like to move down to firefighter,
That's correct. Yep.
we are a 10 of 12.
Yep.
And PD, police officer, is 10 of 12.
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify that because
Yeah.
I think it's important that we recognize that the areas that we're really lacking. Those are not the only two, but those are pretty consistent in fire and PD.
Sure.
Making
And-
sure.
And again, with the few caveats on the police and fire, that's based on this peer group rather than looking at it with the cost of living adjustment, etc.
And I see current MP mid, but so these aren't actual salaries of the people that are getting them, right? These are mid salary ranges
Yeah,
for
I
that
had
position.
to compare positions versus positions. If I started looking at each individual employee, that would, number one, you get into this weird situation. We're looking at where do the positions, based on their current pay scale, match up with the marketplace.
So is it all their salaries averaged out to give us the mid,
No, we have the range.
the step?
That's right. The
Okay.
step plan. That's right. It's basically a combination of step 5 and 6. That's the midpoint of the step plan.
Okay.
Does that help a little bit?
It does. It was just, as far as making decisions and stuff like that, it
Mhm.
just was a little confusing for me not to see the actual salaries that, like, is there a gap between this service tech that's the same rate as this service tech?
That's being
Right.
addressed in details and those are personnel things that staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
If y'all set the policy and get the overall macro structure, then it's on them to make that fit within your HR policies and everything else for the individual employees. And the recommendations are gonna be in the staff side of that report for them.
And if it would be helpful for council to see, let's just say the starting salary for firefighters in these cities, and also so for officers, or library assistants, or custodians, we can get that as well. I believe you have that. Actually, I think they already have that. But we,
Yeah, y'all do.
Well, I think council's concern would probably a big part of their only concern is our history with what had happened in the past. So we want to make sure we actually do match up with the market. And absolutely pay fairly, but out of that, that's kind of what they've been looking for is, are we paying somebody what they're worth?
Yeah.
Right. And that is, I know, probably their biggest concern. Are we paying people what they are worth?
A lot of what may have happened in the past came outside of the pay structure. And then anything that happened within it, frankly, may have worked itself out over time because of inflation.
Right.
And there's been some catch up. And then I think y'all resolved, this council and then maybe a few that came, in an election or two before, y'all have addressed some of the individual things on a personnel basis, and particularly at the director level, and that a lot of that has been resolved. The structural challenges that you have are just structural challenges. They're not driven by personal choice. The personal choice challenges that may have existed have largely been mitigated by yourselves or by leadership by this stage and by time.
and I would add that one of the things that we really want to do is not just look at the dollar amounts, but we want to create that grade and step program, but we also want, it's a great tool, but we want a policy that says you can use the tool this way, you cannot use the tool that. And if I or anybody else on staff wants to misuse that tool, we have to come to council and ask for permission to.
Like
Very,
what
very publicly, very
constitutes
transparent, very accountable.
what constitutes eligibility for an increase in the step? What is our promotion policy? Where do they land? Do they get a guaranteed minimum 12% increase, or is it just up to whomever at that point? It's like, no, I really like so and so. Let's make sure they get a 20% pop and land them at another grade and all of that. You can have a very defined process that's clear about what is allowed. You don't want to take away your autonomy from your city manager, and department directors, but at the same time, setting the boundaries is very, very important. Set the boundaries, then hold them accountable for staying within it and making good decisions.
Any more questions, discussion?
Thank
Thanks.
all of you.
Yeah, we
Really
appreciate it.
appreciate you.
Yeah.
Rob, thank you.
Yes, sir. I would just add that staff has enjoyed working with Shane. We're very glad that we had this opportunity. We think the information he's provided has been helpful. I agree with the two council members that spoke this evening. This has been the best, clearest, basic presentation that we could have, which is exactly what we needed moving forward. So thank
Thank
you
you.
for everything.
Thank all of you.
We can either take a recess. This 30-plus minute presentation I have, I will not be able to squeeze into 3, and I'm not going to push it. So I will table mine until we have another budget workshop.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
what I'm saying. We'll go ahead. We're gonna go ahead and take a recess till 6:05. Give everybody a chance to, or Councilman Hinton hopefully will be here by then. All right, we are re-adjourning. Going into open session. No. We were able to do the budget presentation. Okay, let's go ahead and go into public comments. The city council welcomes citizen participation and comments at all council meetings. Citizens' comments are limited to 3 minutes out of the respect for everyone's time. The council is not permitted to respond to your comments. The Texas Open Meetings Act requires that the topics of discussion deliberation be posted on the agenda not less than 3 business days in advance of the council meetings. If your comments relate to a topic that is on the agenda, the council will discuss that topic on the agenda at the time that the topic is discussed and deliberated. Do we have any public comment?
Mayor and members of the council, my name is Kyle Mooring. I am the primary complainant in an ongoing federal whistleblower investigation, and I am from Mount Vernon, Texas. I've come before you for nearly a year about one thing: whether the city's own records and processes can be trusted. The city has publicly acknowledged a vendor impersonation theft of more than $1 million in city funds. When I requested police records about that theft, the city withheld them. On June 30th, the Attorney General ruled the city failed to submit them for review as the law requires. So the records are presumed public and the state ordered them to be released. That is not my opinion, that is the state's ruling. And this is not an isolated problem. When I went in person to inspect an internal controls letter, the city told me I would have to pay $72 before I could even look at it, a condition I do not believe the Public Information Act authorized for that inspection. When another requester asked for that same fiscal year 2025 audit letter, the one documenting the city's own material weaknesses, the city stated it had no document of that date. Yet in his audit presentation to this council, the city's own auditor, John Watson, identified a communication regarding internal controls and directed council to see letter for internal controls findings noted related to the city. That same internal controls communication is also cited in the city's own ACFR. Separate from that audit letter, I still have not received records the state ordered released. On June 2nd, the Attorney General ordered the release of the Walmart Store 131 records, including an October 2025 email from MPFD Deputy Chief Rodriguez. More than a month later, the city has not told me it has challenged the ruling in court. And the council should sit with one more fact. On July 1st, the city manager named Rodriguez acting fire chief during the transition after the fire chief resigned. His October 2025 email is part of the records order released, and his name appears in the fire inspection discrepancies I have documented. These are not technicalities. Public records are the foundation of every oversight process: an ethics review, a police referral, an audit. I backed every concern with documents, with the city's own statements, and now with the Attorney General's own rulings. So the question before this council is no longer whether there is enough to justify review. There is. The question is whether this council will continue to leave these matters unaddressed, even though they concern public funds, public records, and the trust of people you represent. Mr. Vine, I will say this directly but narrowly. I have read the Prado report, a prior outside investigation involving a department you led before coming to Mount Pleasant, including its recommendation to sustain a finding of failure to supervise. Some members of this council may not be familiar with that report, and I am not asking this council to relitigate it tonight, but one finding is directly relevant. The investigator found that the city's own IT search did not produce complete email threads. That is a records integrity problem, the same I am raising tonight. Independent outside review can surface what internal assurances cannot. That is precisely why we need one here. So I'm asking the council for 2 actions tonight on the record. First, place my formal ethics complaints and these public information concerns back on the council agenda in the open. Second, authorize an independent auditor or outside investigator to review the city's public information practices, how records are searched, produced, preserved, and charged for, and how the city has handled Attorney General rulings. Transparency is not a favor to me. It is the foundation of public trust. I am asking you to act on it. Thank you.
Any public comment? No? All right. Let's go ahead and move on to item number 2. This is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are approved through a single council motion, which applies to all items listed. Consent agenda items are considered routine, not likely to require discussion or deliberation, and may be discussed prior to making the motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless the council member requests an item be removed and considered separately. Item number 2, consider approval of June 16th, 2026 meeting minutes. Item number 3, consider pay request number 37 for Drake Construction, Southside Wastewater Treatment Plant. Item number 4, consider approval of engagement on Brooks Watson and Company, PLLC, to perform the financial audit for September 30th, 2026. And item number 5, consider ordinance 2026-15, a budget amendment increasing allocations in the general and utility fund for the placement of an interim finance director. Any discussion?
I have a question. On number 5, Rob, I think you sent us an email on that.
I believe with the minutes.
Uh,
Correct.
Where it's consider the ordinance for the budget amendment.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Do we want to pull it off consent? And
No, I do not believe I did send it.
can I bring that to regular agenda?
Yes.
Oh.
You
Yeah,
have to have
yeah,
a motion
sure.
to remove that.
All right, so let's go ahead and make a motion for the consent agenda with removing item number 5, moving it into regular agenda.
So I make a motion to approve item number 2, 3, and 4 of the consent agenda to be,
One second.
I second.
Madam Secretary, get a vote, please.
Yes.
aye.
Aye. All right, motion passed unanimously. Let's go ahead and move on to the regular agenda, and we'll push item number 5 into that. Consider ordinance 2026-15, a budget amendment increasing allocations in the general and utility funds for the placement of an interim finance director. Discussion?
Just refresh me for somebody.
HR Director Holly Motley will come up and speak to that. Thank you.
Good evening. So I've spent some considerable amount of time estimating what it's going to cost to keep our interim through the end of budget and finding places to pull money to try to cover that. So half of it comes from the utility fund and the other half comes from the general fund. And we pulled from salary savings out of the administrative and the TMRS cost with that as well. Some money from both sides for the employee recognition fund, and the contractual fees and services, which would be the legislative, and full-time salaries also from one of the code enforcement positions that we had cut, and utility side as well for the pre-treatment. Yeah, that's a lot of work. So, yeah. Are there any more questions?
We appreciate it. Thanks for all the work.
Thank you all.
All right, let's go ahead and get a motion on that.
I make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2026-15 for the budget amendment, increasing the allocations in the general and utility fund for the placement of an interim finance director.
Second. Madam Secretary, can you get a vote, please? Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
All right, item passed unanimously. Let's go ahead and move on to item number 6, discuss and consider resolution 2026-14, authorizing the award of grant administrators to provide PWD application and project-related administration project delivery services for the Texas Water Development Board Water Supply and Infrastructure Grant Program, and that's our Assistant City Manager, Webster.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So, Councilmember Hageman, our Utilities Director Marshall, our water treatment plant foreman, Ed Turner, and Utilities Foreman Romero, they all met over the course of 2 days, reviewed all the bids that were submitted for grant administrators and engineers. So the first one is for, I'm just going to say this one for you, if it's okay. The first one is for the grant administrator, and it was awarded to Trailer and Associates. All their packet information is in there, but both bidders, along with the scoring sheet and all that on how they did it, is in your packet on number 6.
Questions or discussion?
They're going to manage the grant for the city.
And that's no money out of our pocket, right?
No,
They
sir.
get the portion of, yeah.
They're going, once we get this approved and get the ball rolling, they will start all that paperwork.
Motion? Yeah.
I make a motion that we, consider the resolution, adopt the resolution 2026-14, authorizing the award of a grant administrator to provide PWDB application and projected related administration, for the Texas Water Development Board Water Supply and Infrastructure Grant Program.
I second.
Councilmember Corbell,
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, passed unanimously. And just to reiterate, it's not the grant, it's not costing us anything.
no, sir.
Right, okay. All right, awesome. Let's move on to item number 7. Discuss and consider resolution 2026-15, authorizing the award of grant engineer to provide PWDB. Sorry, my eyes are tired. Application and project-related professional engineering, architectural, surveying services for the Texas Water Development Board Program, Water Supply and Infrastructure Grants Project. Same type of thing?
Same thing. All of their packet is information there, all the scoring sheets for all of the engineering. And again, they did meet for 2 days. I was very proud of them to get this done for y'all. And they have recommended the award to go to Cape Dawson.
Question? Discussion? Motion?
I make a motion to approve resolution 2026-15, awarding Tate Dawson and grant engineer to provide TWDB application and project-related professional engineering, architectural surveying service for the Texas Water Development Board Program, Water Supply and Infrastructure Grant Projects.
Need a second?
Second.
Madam Secretary, can we get a vote?
Councilmember Faulkner,
Aye.
Councilmember Corbell,
Yes.
Councilmember Hinton.
Aye.
All right, passed unanimously. Thank you. All right, we got item number 8, discussion of City Mount Pleasant noise ordinance, and that's going to be our police chief.
Mayor, members of council, as Chief walking up, if you remember a few months ago, we had our Public Works Director get up and speak on mosquito spraying. There was no action required, just for information. We are going to do that from time to time. This is a topic that we've picked, and Chief will go over and just explain what our current noise ordinance is. So there will be no action on this. This is for information for you and the public.
So in your packet, I've included several different ordinances that kind of address noises within the city. At the back of the packet is some state ordinances, but in the front, a couple of pages with city ordinances. We do have the main city ordinance we use is 130.25, which is unreasonable noises. And the highlight there is basically that if a noise distresses or disturbs the quiet comfort or repose of any person of reasonable sensibility within the vicinity or hearing thereof, or as to endanger or injure the safety or health of persons, or as to interfere with the physical well-being of persons, then it can be declared a noise ordinance. Obviously, all these ordinances require discretion used by the officer that we're responding to a call or hearing noises that they think may address it. I believe there's a ruling years ago that says the police officer can't be a victim to a noise, and so we obviously usually respond to calls for service regarding loud parties and stuff like that, and then they go out and listen to see if they can hear it, because it is a misdemeanor, it has to be committed in their presence, then take criminal action. So, anyway, so that's kind of the bread and butter of unreasonable noises within the city. As you continue down, I've included another one which enumerates some specific noises. It kind of addresses people honking their horn for fun or for no reason, and it goes into several different paragraphs documenting different types of noise. It actually even addresses mufflers or other devices on vehicles, which is actually later on in another ordinance covered in the vehicle section. in the traffic section. But it talks about construction and when construction equipment can run. It actually gives times of dates for that, times of the day, when it can begin. It talks about peddlers who are out yelling on corners and stuff like that. I mean, it goes into all kinds of stuff. Not all of it. Now, obviously, some of it, we do have a constitution related to public speech. So like a peddler yelling on a corner on South Jefferson, we're probably not going to take any action because it's a pretty loud area anyway. But it goes into animals that are on people's property. So basically your dog who barks nonstop all night and stuff like that allows the officers to take some action. And then as you go, you see it goes into mufflers, which is prevention of noises and public nuisances. And then, like I said, I included some applicable state statutes. So I guess theoretically, or in totality, when I look at noise ordinances, I can say over my near 30-year career, they are sometimes difficult to enforce because the officer needs to witness the violation. And like your loud party complaints and stuff, a lot of times they will issue a warning and they'll tell them to knock it off, don't make us come back. And usually that results in and so if we go back, then they have to hear it again. And so the officers try to be patient with our community and those who are having family events and gatherings, but and so they do respond to these calls frequently. There were a lot of them on July 4th. A lot of those came in as shots fired, but they were fireworks. We do have a fireworks ordinance as well, but they are busy responding, especially on holiday weekends to some of these loud parties. One of the complaints I do get a lot of times or with some regularity is loud muffler. Officers do drive around, they do enforce that, but it also requires them to not be engaged in something else when they hear it and then to find that car that echoed down Main Street, sorry, I call it Main, echoed down Madison or Jefferson, be able to catch up to them, find out which vehicle it is, and then take some enforcement. So they do that when they find it and when they hear it and when they can identify who's doing it, but they also have to be not engaged in something else, traffic. If they're driving to a call, traffic is always secondary to responding to that call for service.
So do they receive a ticket, like if they've got open exhaust, or?
That's at the discretion of the officer. We don't mandate what enforcement action they take. They're on scene dealing with the person. There are fix-it tickets if it's something that is like a damaged muffler or a muffler.
Most of the ones I see are just cut.
Yeah, so if it's been modified, they can issue a fix-it, or they can issue a warning. Sorry, we don't have fix-it tickets. They can issue a warning, or they can issue a citation. Sometimes our officers, I would say, generally, a lot of times our officers try to be patient with our citizens, so they may issue a warning and say, fix it. And the next time they get pulled over, they can actually pull that history and see. They do this with, for example, they do that with no driver's licenses often. They'll check with dispatch to see if that person has already received a warning for driving without a license. And if they have, then they may take that vehicle or they may issue citations, but they try to be patient. So that's a tool that's at their discretion when they're on the scene dealing with it. So a lot of times it depends on that engagement and that conversation they have with the individual.
And on the noise complaint, is there any like time that's excluded, like from 8 in the morning till 9
that's
at
one
night?
thing that's good about our ordinance. So there's
Okay.
no requirement it has to be after 10 or 11 o'clock. It's basically if it's unreasonable.
Okay.
And so the officer, I mean, like I said, if it's noon but it's unreasonable, they can take enforcement action.
So I want you to give me a scenario. So I've got especially elderly neighbors. One was very, very ill. And one of our cute little neighbors was a young man that just loved to rev his motor like at ungodly times. Came home late and left early. And they were continually complaining, and they were asking me what to do. So can you kind of give a scenario for our elderly population on when they go to bed at 8:30 at night or 9 o'clock at night?
Well,
what
first-
do they do?
Well, I have a couple of recommendations. First is be patient. We live in a city, right? And so that's one of the things of living in a city. We're in close proximity. I do understand their concern and their frustration with it. But again, the issue is the officer has to be there to witness it on a traffic violation. And so we've had that scenario where the individual had very regular hours. And so the officers were able to, because they knew of the hours, they were able to show up as they left for work or be in the area, and they could hear them coming from a quarter mile away. And so then they took enforcement action. But it is very difficult when it's irregular. Our officers are busy. We have a high call volume, and they're pretty actively engaged. And so it's just a matter, it's very difficult for them just to sit in an area. And 9 times out of 10, I've done it before, 9 times out of 10, if an officer's sitting there, that's when they do not show up, right? Actually, I'll say 99 times out of 100. And so that just ends up being the luck of the draw. So if there's a time frame, and the officers will, our officers are really good about saying that I'll be out there as I can if they're not on another call for service, and I'll try to hear it and take some enforcement action, because they do understand that it can be frustrating for neighbors. So they're happy to address it. It's just irregularity is our challenge a lot of times.
Well, thank you, because I really think that if I can refer them to this YouTube to watch it, that would help them with their patience.
Well, yeah, and the best thing they can do is, so our officers kind of work districts, and so if they talk to the officer, they can call dispatch, talk to the officer, and just say, here's kind of when we hear it. That officer is likely to be very engaged and say, okay, I'll pay attention and I'll come around. And so a lot of times people will call me and I'm like, I'm not the guy who worked in your area or the gal working in your area. And so the officer is happy to come out and talk to that neighbor and kind of get the lay of the land and then respond accordingly.
Is our current noise ordinance not working? Does it need to be updated? Is that what?
Not that I'm aware of. I actually think our noise ordinance is broad enough to give the officers quite a bit of discretion, which is good. Some cities want decibels. You got to carry a decibel meter, and then it's how many feet you can get close before you can turn it on. So I kind of like our ordinance. I actually recently sent it to another chief who was looking at their noise ordinance, and he's like, oh, that's one of the better ones I've seen. I like that one, because the more restrictive it is, more difficult it is to enforce. And so I like the reasonable standard. Our officers have homes and neighbors too, so they really care about the community. So I think that reasonableness for them.
Are you getting complaints? Is that why we're looking at new ordinances? Are you getting complaints, or did we
No,
ask for it?
this is, we're not looking at new ordinance. This is just one that is sometimes not commonly understood or even known about. Even in my neighborhood, I hear loud music. I choose not to call in unless it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. But I know what the ordinance is. My neighbors might not. So if they know that there is an ordinance that's in existence that helps protect the neighborhood and improve the quality of life, this is just sharing that with the council and with the public. So no, we are not recommending that changes. We're just sharing so everyone's aware that we do have. Yes.
And I choose to call in, and they do a great job. That's why I was asking about the hours, is
Yeah.
because I almost feel like it's a Koresh and achy breaky heart going from like 7 in the morning till about 2 or 4 in the afternoon, and I start to lose it. So I give you guys a call.
Well, and anecdotally, that's what. Anecdotally, it is difficult. I've worked graveyards and I've slept during the day, and my neighbor mows the lawn. It wakes me up. But there's nothing unreasonable about somebody mowing their lawn in the middle of the day,
Right.
right? I would say the general feeling in the community is mowing your lawn at 4 in the morning is probably not reasonable because most people are sleeping. But so we occasionally get complaints where it's like, yeah, we're sorry, but the officer's like, but I can't do anything about it. It's kind of reasonable, right? So I like the reasonable standard, and I think our ordinance is broad enough to allow that.
Yeah,
It does tend to, it seems to cover everything though.
right. Yeah.
So, I
appreciate
mean, the only specifics is like construction, right? Which is, I think it says 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., which is good. It gives our businesses that direction when they have construction on their sites. And so it's good to give them some direction like that. They can just look at it and say, okay, we can do that.
Come on up, Steve.
My question is, if we recorded it, can you use it, or is that enough?
Like a video recording for
Yeah,
people
video
that,
or
It may give the officer some more information to act on, but it needs to occur in their presence, and they may or may not determine that's in their presence. But a recording, even like body camera, it tells a story, but it's a two-dimensional. And so the officer may say, well, I can't tell where exactly you're standing or where you were or how loud it is based on the microphone. So it's good to give them that information, but they may still go over and give a warning, right? Unless
right.
it's really out of bounds, they may be like, okay, that's so it never hurts. I mean,
I just
re-record
didn't
everything,
know
so-
if it was, legal or anything like that. but I
it's
mean,
if you're in a public place recording people or in a public place, it's legal to record it.
show a time,
Yeah,
whatever.
it does. It will timestamp it, which can be helpful.
I think that's what your wife did the last time. She recorded it and played it for him over the telephone.
But your snoring is not a public nuisance. It's only her nuisance, right?
yeah.
Does the 7 to 7 rule include like lawnmowers in July?
No.
construction.
So if you look in your packet, and you don't need to look in it, I'll find it for you. But it's actually it's under it's on page 2 under G. It actually talks about demolition, retention, or repair of any building, street, or public utility. That's where it's specific to that ordinance, which is basically and only with a permit from a chief building official. So it really talks about construction.
Because in July, I mean, you can still be out meeting at 9 o'clock.
Correct.
You know,
Yeah.
mowing and stuff.
Question,
And-
discussion? Oh,
And I would just say in July, the officer might be like, it's 7 o'clock, but it's still light outside, so I'm going to allow it. Yeah. I'm not gonna
Really,
worry
right?
about it, right? But, yeah.
Thank you, Chief. Again, we'll bring topics like this to council and the public from time to time. Just we'll highlight things and also help explain things. And if there's anything that you would like brought, definitely let me know. We'll bring it forward next.
That's great, Chief.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. All right, let's move on to item number 9. Discuss possible direction regarding city charter review timeline, process, and topics for consideration. And that's our city attorney. Hello, Lee.
Hi, Mayor and Council. We had, since the last council meeting, we had a meeting with a couple of you to discuss a possible items to consider for the charter review process. In that process, we realized that because the city was looking to try to be ready for the November election, for the charter election. And unfortunately, because of just the way the days fell between the last charter election and when this election is in November, there's not a full 2 years. And that's what would be required under the Texas Constitution in order to have a charter election in November. And so the soonest the city could look at doing the charter election would be in May. And which would, I think the advantage to that would be also, though, that it'll give the city more time to get feedback from the community and so on proposed revisions to the charter. The type of things that were being considered and will be, I think, promoted as possible items for the charter election would be potentially adding recall provisions, considering forfeiture provisions in the charter for attendance and things of that nature, and sort of strengthening some of the requirements under confidentiality and other sort of provisions that are presently in the city's ethics code, but that you might want to include in your charter. And so, and whatever is on the potentially considered by the council would be included in a ballot that would be passed by the council to be included in the election in May, as soon as May.
So are we going to set up I know you were talking about a board, committee. Is there a timeline for when we're gonna start reviewing that?
Candace, would you like to cover that?
So I plan on sending y'all an email tomorrow, addressing that, appointing at the next council meeting, y'all appointing 2 council members to that committee. And then if you can provide citizens that you would like to be a part of the committee with their contact information so that we can get the committee part started and to move forward with that.
So you'd like for us each to give you one name? Okay.
And it can't be Steve. Said it can't be Steve. Yep. All right. Any more questions? All right. Go ahead and move on to item number 10, discuss and consider acceptance of resignation for Council Member Melanie Knight Tafoya, Place 2, and calling a special election to fill the vacancy of Place 2. Going to be our Assistant City Manager.
As you can see, Councilmember Tafoya submitted her resignation, and it is placed inside the packet. And so we will need to fill that position, that place, and it will be on the November ballot. So we have till July 17th to get all of our stuff together, and then that's when citizens inside the city limits are able to start getting their name on the ballot for the November election.
So what is like I know there's always a cutoff deadline that you got to have your packet.
So July 18th is the first day, and August the 17th is the last day. And that is posted on our website. Yes.
Questions, concerns? Good to go? All right. We're moving on to item number 11, but oh, yeah, sorry. Let's go ahead and make a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept Councilman Knight's resignation and to go ahead and call a special election to fill the vacancy of Place 2.
Second.
I second.
Madam Secretary, can we get a vote, please?
Yes?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Item number 10 passed unanimously. We'll go ahead and move to 11, but 11 is removed. And we will go ahead and move on to.
Do we need an action to remove that? Or
You didn't say so, right?
Are we on item number
11? Do we need a motion to remove
11?
Yeah,
Or
we were
can we
just
just vote?
removing it. I didn't.
Yeah, I believe that, I think that the city management wanted to remove this item or
Mhm.
table it until the
Correct.
next
Remove
council
it.
meeting.
Yeah, it was removed.
I
So
was
do we
just making sure we didn't need a motion.
Do we need a motion to remove?
You can certainly do that. You
We'll
can.
play it safe.
That's fine to have a motion to table it.
Nope, removed.
Lee, we're wanting to remove it from the agenda until we have till later.
All right, can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to remove Resolution 2026-16, authorizing the amendment of the sanitary landfill agreement between the City of Mount Pleasant and Pleasant Oaks Landfill, increasing commercial gate rates and other fees effective October 1st, 2026, remove it from the meeting agenda.
Second. All right, Madam Secretary, good vote, please.
Councilmember Faulkner,
Aye.
Councilmember Corbell,
Yes?
Councilmember Hint.
Yes.
Item passed unanimously. We'll go ahead and go on to 12, discuss and consider resolution 2026-17, adopting the City of Mount Pleasant's procurement policy, and that's our city manager. Bye.
Mayor and members of council, good evening again. Effective September 1st, 2025, Senate Bill 1173 amended the state law to raise the competitive procurement threshold for municipalities from 50,000 to 100,000. The city intentionally restrained, and we did not change our policy because of recent history, and we wanted to maintain internal controls, transparency, and also this is an effort to continue to build public trust. However, the current policy, it's still at 50,000. Current policy has created practical challenges for certain purchases, specifically vehicles. We know those vehicles are over 50,000. And it requires special upfitting for public safety and operational use, specifically fire and police. Vehicle purchases, again, exceed that $50,000 mark and that threshold. And when that does, it requires the staff to go out for bid. And when we go out for bid, we have to advertise. We have to pay for that. So what we are suggesting is that we raise the city's internal threshold to 100,000. It would align with the purchasing policy that was revised by state law, while still requiring competitive pricing practices. The proposed change would also allow staff to use more efficient procurement processes for purchases under $100,000, while maintaining accountability and compliance with industry standards and best practices. Formal request bids, as I mentioned earlier, require legal notices, including advertisement in local newspapers, online posting for required period before bid opening. This costs money, this costs time, and if we were to change that, we believe we still have good internal control, we're still being accountable, and being good stewards, and we're also being in compliance with the state. So our proposed amendment is expected to reduce administrative costs by eliminating unnecessary publication expenses for purchases below 100,000, reduce staff time associated with this, but we are still going to get the best bid, best prices, and try to maintain local business as much as we can. So our recommendation, I'll be happy to answer any questions, but our recommendation would be to approve the amendment to the city's purchasing policy to raise the competitive procurement threshold to 100,000, which is consistent with Senate Bill 1173 state law. An option, if you prefer, is to maintain that 500 threshold, but make vehicles an exception. That could create a little confusion, but that would be acceptable.
I've got a question. Did we
Yes.
consider 75,000? Would that still allow you to buy a vehicle if we moved
Not
it to
police.
75?
No, so a police vehicle is going to be close to 75,000 with upfitting, which is almost at
Over
100,000.
100, yeah. I mean,
Yes.
they're over 100,000 now when you fit them
So,
out, right?
did we consider that? Yes, it would, in our opinion, because it would be close to 50. It's not that much of a difference.
And this will help us shop more locally, right?
We can do it
I'm
either
still
way.
competitive,
We just
right.
won't have to have sealed bids and post it for
Right.
X amount of time, or have it open for 2 weeks. So if we're able to find something that's local, get free bids, we can move on it.
And this kind of goes hand in hand with our
Getting out of the
vehicle.
lease program.
Yeah,
yes.
getting out of the lease program. So hopefully that'll help move things along.
Do we have a policy in place to make sure that we do as local as every time that we can? I mean, to keep making sure that
There
we-
is not a policy that says you will check locally every time, but staff is. That is an emphasis.
All right. Need a motion?
Mayor,
Yes,
may I
ma'am.
add one other thing?
Mhm.
So the policy that I think you're seeing is out of chapter 20, which is out of the previous employee handbook. And so technically this has already been like superseded by the new handbook because you all were just covering HR matters in the handbook. And so the way that the resolution is worded is to address that you would be reinstating basically this policy. And so you don't presently have the policy, even though the staff has abided by it. So.
But it's one of those things, not that it would happen, but it could always be changed. Yeah. So,
Sorry, yes, the state did say that cities can adopt stricter policy. And that's what we did initially. We
Yeah,
did make it a little stricter because of our recent history. But what we also don't want to do is create more problems for ourselves, which is
Absolutely.
costing us more money.
I was about to say, yeah, it's probably costing us more money.
and frustration.
Discussion, question, motion?
I agree that it needs to be changed. It makes sense, what we've heard, so I'd like to make the motion to go ahead and approve resolution 2026-17, adopting the city's purchasing policy to raise the competitive procurement threshold to 100,000.
I'll second.
All right, Madam Secretary, can you get a vote, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes,
All right, passed unanimously. Go ahead and move on to item number 13, city manager's report.
Mayor, members of council, good evening again. Just very briefly, longtime Fire Chief Larry McRae submitted his resignation last week. All of you received the information about that. After dedicating more than 50 years of service to the city of Mount Pleasant, with over 40 of those years serving as the fire chief. Having known Chief since 1997, I can personally attest to how much he contributed to the community, to the county, and also to the public that he served and the lives that he changed. In a city like Mount Pleasant, it's extremely easy for someone who's been in a position that long to become larger than life. I think that's exactly what he did. So we thank him for his years of service and his contribution, and we wish him well moving forward. Deputy Chief Mauricio Rodriguez, he's here with us tonight. He's been named acting fire chief and will lead the department during the transition. Rodriguez is a 27-year-old veteran of our fire department and has served as deputy chief for the past 8 years. He's also has experience with Addison Fire Department, Farmers Branch Fire Department, holds a master's firefighter certificate through the Texas Commission on Fire Protection, and graduated from the East Texas Fire Chief Academy. I would encourage residents to take comfort in the fact that we will not see a decrease in service, either in the city or in the county. Our department is staffed. Not much has changed other than leadership, but I have full confidence we'll move forward as we did before. This week, I'm speaking with fire department leadership to determine who the best internal candidate is to proceed as the interim fire chief. The goal will be to have that person in position for 6 months before that the position is advertised inside and outside. And we will have a full chief selection process. So, but again, that will be about 6 months out. So whoever is chosen, and I will decide that Friday, will be in that interim position for at least 6 months. That's the plan. Second subject, staff's currently working on our first budget draft. And council, I would like to have another council meeting, a budget workshop. So we obviously ran out of time tonight. So have another budget workshop meeting at our July 21st meeting. And if that doesn't work, we need to do it a different night. Tuesday night's not good for you. We could look at making that adjustment. Chief Tax Assessor Shirley Dickerson will be here that evening to share with us the updated and expected tax numbers for next fiscal year. Currently working with Anderson Town Crossing, and we'll be bringing in our financial consultant Hilltop to talk about the tax increment reinvestment zone. I think we're getting close to the point where that becomes a topic that comes to council. The plan is to create the downtown district prior to the TERS. That way the downtown district can be a beneficiary of the tax increment reinvestment zone. Money that's being reinvested, some of that will come back to downtown. That will be a process, and we'll have a few meetings.
And for now, emergency coordinator is also.
It's also
Okay. All right, awesome.
last thing before you have a question. If you've been out to the Academy Box Store last Friday, they poured half the slab. The other half of the slab, weather permitting, is supposed to be poured this Friday, and the walls are expected to be constructed by July 20. Go ahead. Amen.
when you're talking about a downtown district, would you explain exactly what that is? Are you talking about the central business district, or is this going
Creating a downtown district. This is what Lynn talked about a few weeks ago with Main Street.
Okay. Will it be, though, that district that's now central business?
It will include That's all I have in a report.
All right, on the council comments limited to announcements of upcoming events, recent council member activities, or requests to add agenda items for the upcoming meeting. Anyone have? No? No? Anything? Nope. We're good. I'm good tonight also. All right, we're gonna go ahead and move into executive session pursuant to Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551, Texas Government Code. The city council will recess into executive session to discuss the following: consultation with attorney, Texas Government Code 551.071, concerning lawsuit style Kyle Mooring versus City of Mount Pleasant, cause number 44437, in the 76th Judicial District Court, Titus County, Texas. So it is 6:52. We're moving into executive session.
Oh, okay. Oh.
We are back from closed session. It is 7:24 PM, and we are adjourning. Can I get a motion to adjourn? No, right? Would, no action? Oop, your mic. Your mic, it went off. There you go.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Just a second.
Second.
All right, Madam Secretary, get a vote, please.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, passed unanimous. Adjourn, 7:25. All right, he needs one.
Go down to Skills on Wheels and get us,